Okay, let's dive right into this. Today, we're tossing out the usual boring talking points and taking you on a massive, immersive 2050 urban safari. So sit back and get comfortable because we're taking a vertical leap into an era where even the slickest real estate agents won't be able to promise you an unobstructed view. Where exactly are we going to live in the future? And more importantly, how are we going to live? The data we've got on this is genuinely mind-blowing and honestly, pretty fun to look at.
Now, this sharp contrast you're seeing, this is basically the beating heart of 2050. On one side, we've got this flawless, gleaming, smart city utopia, complete with Elon Musk's dreams of Mars colonies. But then, on the flip side, we have this much more absurd, kind of hilarious cyberpunk dystopia reality. Picture this. People working minimum wage while Jeff Bezos' cargo drones get all tangled up in their balcony laundry lines. And you, yes, you watching this right now, you are standing right in the middle of this wild transitional future. It makes you wonder, right? How is this funny collision between billionaire high-tech and our everyday, ordinary lives going to shape where we actually end up living?
Which brings us to part one, the super cities of 2050.
You see, humanity's age-old struggle for shelter against nature, it's about to get its biggest, most complex, algorithm-managed update in history. Think about it. We started out in 10,000 BC in these super primitive Neolithic mud brick houses. Fast forward to the 1st century, we get to historical Rome. Stunning architecture, sure, but streets that literally smelled like open sewage. Then we hit the heart of the Industrial Revolution in the 19th century, breathing in the thick, smoggy air of London that made you forget you even had lungs. Through all those eras, we really just had one main drive, finding a roof over our heads. But now, as we look to the far right of our timeline, to 2050, it's not just about staying warm anymore. We're looking at massive super cities managed end-to-end by incredibly complex algorithms.
So the crucial point is 70%. According to the data we're looking at, by the time we hit 2050, 70% of the entire global population is going to be packed into these massive metropolises. Literally the biggest wave of human gathering in history. But that raises a huge question, doesn't it? Where and how on earth do we fit that many people? What actually happens when we completely run out of room to spread out horizontally? Well, vertical architecture is no longer just some luxury choice for a nice ocean view penthouse. Because of severe physical space limitations, building cities is turning into a giant, high-stakes game of Tetris just to survive. Every single square meter, every single block has to be stacked flawlessly on top of each other, driven by pure algorithmic necessity. Zero margin for error. Our buildings aren't going to be these standalone architectural masterpieces anymore. They'll literally be solved mathematical equations designed to house a massive population. Moving on to part two, let's look at AI in our daily life and what our morning routines will look like. Let's slow things down for a second. Let's zoom out of that macro metropolis view and look at how your personal life is going to flow intimately inside this giant Tetris game. Close your eyes and imagine waking up on a totally normal morning in 2050. Step one, you open your eyes inside an AI-powered modular capsule home developed by Toyota. Then, step two, and this is where it gets crazy. Your house, the actual capsule you're in, silently detaches from the massive building it's plugged into and flawlessly locks onto Apple's autonomous rails system. And step three, my absolute favorite part, while you're gliding along those autonomous rails on your commute, your capsule home is already brewing your morning coffee in the background. It's wild to see how these giant futuristic tech brands are going to turn cold technology into a morning routine that feels incredibly tangible and surprisingly cozy, right? Let's move to part three and see how this builds into smart infrastructures that naturally integrate with the environment. When we look out the window of our comfy little commuter capsule at the rest of the city, we're greeted by this entirely different zero-carbon ecosystem. It's called agritecture, this brilliant mashup of agriculture and architecture. And let me tell you, this concept completely rewrites the rules of the game. We used to have this destructive mindset of, all right, where do we pour the concrete today? But in the 2050 vision, today's glass and steel skyscrapers are transformed into zero-carbon vertical farming towers. They basically act like giant lettuce fields that use their own waste to feed their own ecosystem. Our cities won't just be places we live in, they'll literally become living fields that feed us. And this revolutionary architecture doesn't just stop at the buildings. It goes right down to the ground we walk on. Enter the sponge city concept. The streets and avenues of the city are built with marvels of engineering designed to behave exactly like nature itself. So, when it rains, instead of flooding, these smart streets act like a giant sponge, naturally absorbing, filtering, and recycling the rainwater right back into the city's system. It completely blurs that line between software optimization and natural geography.
But what happens if we literally run out of room on land? Well, this is where we hit one of the most futuristic concepts in our explainer, the Oceanics Project. Inspired by Denmark's artificial energy islands, these are massive, floating neighborhoods built right in the middle of the ocean. And these aren't just pretty concepts. They are designed as vital new homes for climate refugees affected by rising sea levels. So you see, geography is no longer going to be our fate. Where we live just becomes a massive software and engineering optimization problem that we solve by literally building on the water.
So, okay, if our houses are brewing their own coffee, floating on the ocean, and growing lettuce, can you imagine buying and selling real estate the old-fashioned way in a world like that? Today, we stand in line at title deed offices signing stacks of thick paper documents. Seems kind of primitive, doesn't it? But looking at 2050, the real estate sector becomes completely decentralized. When you want to buy property, you'll just log into blockchain-based virtual land offices and sign smart contracts in seconds. Honestly, the sheer helplessness of traditional bureaucracy against this mind-bending high-tech always puts a smile on my face.
And that brings us to part 4, cities as living organisms. And this brilliantly illustrates the philosophical peak of everything we've been talking about. When we ask what a city actually is, we find a much deeper living answer. It takes us right back to the great ancient philosopher Plato and his famous concept of the ideal state. Humanity's quest for the perfect shelter and the perfect system hasn't really changed since then. That universal curiosity about shelter that occupied Plato's mind thousands of years ago is exactly what forms the foundation for the smart city projects being designed by Silicon Valley billionaires today. The intention is exactly the same. It's just that our toolkit is entirely digital now. Which leads us to the core thesis of this whole explainer. In the future, cities aren't just going to be piles of stone, glass, and steel that we sleep and work in. No, they are going to evolve into massive, intellectual, living organisms that constantly observe us, analyze our habits second by second, and literally breathe with us using our biometric data. The walls around you won't just protect you, they'll actually feel you. Think about just how intimate and algorithmically close this relationship is going to be. You wake up in the morning, and the system managing your room speaks to you in a tone exactly like this. Good morning. According to the biometric data from your sensors, your dopamine level is looking quite low today. Please don't worry. To balance your mood, I am projecting some incredibly soothing virtual nature scenery for you through the smart glass right now. It's highly helpful, a little bit robotic, but strangely comforting, right? The city you live in literally becomes your closest life coach and therapist. So in light of all these breathtaking innovations, here's the bottom line, guys. By the time we hit 2050, asking what neighborhood will I live in or will I have an ocean view is going to be totally irrelevant. We're going to be left with a much bigger, much more provocative reality. This massive entity, your smart home and your city, that optimizes every second of your life, from your morning coffee to the dopamine levels in your blood. What update is its operating system on? Is the operating system managing you actually up to date? Or is life just passing you by while you're stuck frozen on an old version? Because honestly, that is going to be your biggest problem. And on that thought-provoking note, we're wrapping up today's deep dive. Catch you next time, and hey, don't forget to stay updated.